I am so excited you're here for episode 4. Last time I promised you that I was going to teach you to do one thing that is a real game changer for teaching and improving a variety of different skills. But just like everything else in this series and all human learning in general, it's going to require being able to use some foundational building blocks. So let's do a quick recap. It all may have started with just one very solid block. You know your learner, you know what they like, you know what they don't like, and you know their strengths. And you've been able to use that as your starting point to build a foundation of other skills. And now we're coming to a point where it doesn't really look like we're adding too much to that foundation, but you're continuing to strengthen that foundation and you're using those basic blocks in new and different ways. So in episode 3, we began examining what happens before a person does something. And in many cases, there's more than one relevant thing that happens. And one of those relevant aspects we looked at was motivation. If something's valuable enough to you in the moment, you're more likely to do something to get it. Now, you could do a lot of different things, but the thing that you choose to do is usually the one that requires the least amount of effort and has the strongest history of getting the effect you want. Because you've learned what to do to produce that result you want. So in this case, B, the behavior, is the cause, and C, consequence, is the effect. And your future responding is being strengthened by having contacted something of value. So now when something becomes valuable, you know what you did in the past to get it, and you're more likely to do that response. So A becomes the cause, and B becomes the effect in this case. But you're not just learning what action to take, but when to take action. You're learning to attend to certain things that were happening around you at that time because these things signal that what's of value might actually be available for doing it right now. And since we all know that just because you want something doesn't mean you're going to get it, these signals can really be the difference between just wanting something and actually doing something to get it. Signals are important because if we didn't learn to attend to these signals of availability, we'd really be expending a lot of effort and energy just doing things that probably weren't going to end up being so effective. All right, now that you know that a signal of availability is what often gets us to act on our motivation, you're going to start to see these everywhere, really because they are everywhere. But these signals can be perceived by any one of our senses. When we directly observe something that's valuable to us or anything that's associated with what's of value, it alerts us to do something because something is good is available, gets us to do something. All right, signals of availability are often in the form of social cues. The words other people say, the tone of voice that they use. If I say, come here versus come here. Which one of those tones do you think signals something good is going to happen? All right. Also, eye contact, body language, gestures. These can signal that people's attention is available. A person's presence can be a signal. So when my kids see their grandma, they know life is about to get 1,000 times better because they have a strong history of good stuff happening when they're with her. And last time I had you practice saying what you were delivering. And one reason for that is so that your child begins to associate that word with something good. And eventually, just hearing that word can be the signal without even having it present. That's huge. It's also why I wanted you to try to avoid showing or talking about things that are valuable to your child or giving them lots of attention when they're doing something that you really don't like them to be doing. Because remember, if you do this, you may be signaling that they value is available, but for undesired behavior. A place can also signal availability. So Hershey Park is correlated with lots of good stuff for my child. That makes it a lot easier to teach and practice different skills that he's going to need in the community. But now think about the doctor or the dentist's office or the barbershop or really any other place that may be hard for you to take your child. Do those places signal good things for your child? So, one quick solution is just to bring some of your child's favorite things with you whenever you go there. So, I have these to go bags that I keep ready. And the only time I really use them is when I'm going somewhere that's going to be hard for my son to go. In a future episode, I'm going to go over some tips to make outings less stressful and more successful. But here's a sneak peek. Just start by pairing the place with something good. All right, now think about what room in your house does your child hang out in? They probably spend the most time in the room that's associated with being able to access their favorite things or other people in the house. And that's really true to all of us. And they probably don't hang out in the rooms that have no signals of availability. So if you're teaching something to your child in a setting that doesn't signal good things, it could make it difficult to teach. And think about all the skills that are taught in the bathroom. Do they readily come to the bathroom? So if you're struggling with a routine, look where that routine occurs and see how you might make it more enjoyable. So, for example, it used to be a struggle to get my son to cooperate during bath time. So, I started looking at the different types of activities that he enjoyed. So, he loves painting. So, I got all these different art supplies, but these were reserved only for the bathroom. Actually, now he loves bath time. And the bathroom being associated with these fun things made it a lot easier for me to tackle other things like teeth brushing. So I use that same strategy as a starting point for any skill really that I'm teaching. I start to pair or correlate that environment with good things. And now ultimately, remember that the signals of availability are going to be in our words. So a direction itself is going to signal us to respond. The other people that we value are going to be the signals, and the cues in the environment are going to be as well. Right now, we just may simply need to add different strategies to help our children learn to attend to those signals. All right, and now the moment you have all been waiting for. I promised you we'd get to this moment, and here it is. It's a principle called promise reinforcement. So we can use what we know about availability to leverage our motivation to respond in a variety of different ways. So essentially, a promise reinforcer signals what's available for responding before a person has the opportunity to respond. All right, but remember the two things that you're going to need to use promise reinforcement effectively, excuse me. I'm going to call this from now on, I'm going to refer to this as the Rolex rule. So one, it has to be valuable in the moment. And the value has to be high enough to offset the effort to respond. Remember that example of the trees. If I promised you that I would pay you $5 to plant the 25 trees, the value does not match the amount of effort. So it's very unlikely that you would follow through with that, right? But if the value is $5,000 that I promised for planting the trees, the value there is much more matched to that and might be more likely to do it. All right, so it has to be valuable in the moment and it has to be timely. So check the value of the promise before you start. So I wouldn't want to ask you to plant the 25 trees and then check the $5, right? I would want to match that up before you started it. And show the promise before you give the direction. You want to wait for your child to cooperate with the direction before you deliver the promise. All right, so here's the basic teaching procedure. You're going to start by showing what's available, and then you're going to state the direction. You want to use simple wording so that that direction is really clear. It's not the direction that you can follow. If it's not a direction, excuse me, that your child can follow, you're going to also need to provide some additional support. So we're going to go into depth about prompts in the next episode. But for right now, you're going to select something that your child can do without a lot of extra support. All right, now if your child cooperates within 5 seconds, you're immediately going to deliver that promise and positive specific praise. So here is a video to demonstrate how to use a promise reinforcer. And shout out to my fellow consultant, Bree Troyer, for volunteering to help me with this video. All right, so just kind of overview of what you're looking for. I'm showing the promise to verify that it's valuable. I have a little minion fan, and we both work with kids, so any kind of cool toy that is definitely valuable. See that genuine smile of that minion fan, right? But her body language or orienting toward me, and she's also looking at me. Those are some signs that that is valuable at that moment. Now, these signs are telling me that she might be motivated, but these are not requirements, okay? Just know that it's not required that your child looks at you before you ask them to do something. Not required that your child's smiling either. All right, so I'm going to use the promise to get her to come toward me after I give the direction, come here. All right, so until I was a parent, I really never realized how many times a day I say to my child, come here, or some variation of that. It's an important skill for teaching lots of other skills and for safety. So notice I'm starting at a fairly close distance. That might not be close enough right now for your child, okay? A good rule of thumb is always start where it's easy and everyone is successful. You actually want most of your practice to be easy so it results in the reward. That's how they're going to learn to do it. All right, so a lot of talking, and let's play.
Good, coming right away. Here's your fan, and check this out. A surprise!
All right, so I showed the fan, followed by a clear direction. Come here, in a very reinforcing tone. Then I delivered positive specific praise. I said, that's how you come. And I delivered the fan plus something she wasn't expecting. And that's one way you can give better reinforcement for better responding. So now the next time I ask her to come, she might be more likely to cooperate because there's a chance that something even better than what I'm presenting will be delivered. All right, so as much as we try to set up for success, here's what you do if they don't cooperate within 5 seconds. Or if your child starts to present some unwanted behavior. Because remember, if something good happens after they do something, they're going to be more likely to do it again. So that even applies to when problem behavior occurs. All right, so.
Come here. Come here. That's how you come.
All right, this time she took a step back. So I removed the presence of the fan, just discreetly, right? And then I restated the direction in a more neutral tone. And then I also provided some light physical guidance to help her respond correctly. And then when she did respond, I gave her a little less praise. That's how you come. I could have chosen here to have her practice again so she could do it more independently and I could give better reinforcement that time, a little better. That would be ideal if I could do that, but it's only ideal if the next practice opportunity is successful. So if that is not going to be the case, if you need to hold off till later, then do that. And that's really the advantage of practicing when you don't really need them to do it. Practice, practice, practice. All right, because if you're starting in the right place and following that Rolex rule, the practice should be successful. But here's some additional tips for using promise reinforcement. Remember, a reinforcer can be anything your child values at the moment. Food is sometimes the easiest to use as a promise reinforcer because it tends to be reliably motivating and it goes away by itself. So if possible, it's best to show what you're going to use because that signal is much more clear and your child will be able to see it, that it's available immediately. If it's an action, let's say tickling, right? You can give a little bit for free to check that value. And then kind of draw back in motion like you're going to do it again. And that can signal to your child that it's available. Or another option is to take a picture of it. When my son used to get off Hershey Park rides, I would show him a picture of the next ride and say, let's go to the fire truck, walk with me. And you may be able to get away with just saying the promise without showing it. For example, let's go get some juice, come with me. But just be aware that saying it relies on some language skills that they might not have acquired yet. I wouldn't start here. The more practice, the more opportunities your child's going to be able to have to do it. All right. And as you practice and everyone is successful, you want to try to systematically fade the use of that promise. Because obviously, you don't want them to only learn to do it when that promise is shown. You can make it a lot easier to get rid of it if from the beginning, you don't make it too obvious. You want to hold the reinforcer somewhere between like your waist level and shoulder level, depending on the learner. You definitely don't want to wave it around and put it in their face or, cover your face with it. Sometimes I see people like holding it right in front of their face. You don't want to do that either. Talking about it can also make it harder to get rid of it. So just showing it is usually enough. If you're going to talk about it, do so after they already have it. Make it more fun that way. And another way to fade that promise is to follow up a successful opportunity with another chance to practice. So if I would have used food, for example, and I delivered that and it went away, I could have then had another opportunity to practice. And this time had her come without the promise and delivered something even more valuable that time when she did it without the promise. Again, that's the advantage of using something that goes away. All right, now timing is everything. You want to determine something valuable enough to compete with the effort before you start. You can present something and check its current value, but you want to do so before you present that direction. If your child doesn't cooperate, you want to remove the presence of that promise reinforcer, but you don't want to offer something more valuable. That's a big, big mistake. If you've ever watched that show, Let's Make a Deal. So Wayne Brady, he will offer the contestants a prize to not take the deal. But now I've noticed the contestants, they've learned from watching the show to never take that first offer because Wayne Brady will end up sweetening the pot and he offers something better, like every time. You don't want to get caught up in that game with your child and that you want them to learn to cooperate the first time. And when they do that, things get better. So, on that same note, you want to make sure the promise is always something good that happens and not a threat of taking away something if they don't do it. So, when used effectively, promise reinforcement increases our motivation to cooperate or do something that's beneficial to the learner. But threats of punishment, on the other hand, they activate a different kind of response, that fight or flight response. So the individual either resists and it ends up being a battle. All right, I told you you're not going to go play outside and I mean it. That might actually intensify your child's response because now they've lost something that's valuable to them. If it's valuable, it's worth fighting for. Now put yourself in their shoes and try to remember the last time that you felt like something of value was threatened, and how did you respond to that? The thought of losing something that was valuable to you. All right, but that flight response isn't good either. When your child ends up doing what they're told to avoid an undesired consequence, we may feel like we've won, but because they're doing what we want them to be doing, right? Wrong. What they actually did was complied only after a threat was made. So in the future, they're not going to be more likely to cooperate. They're going to be more likely to be compliant or do things against their will once they've perceived some sort of potential threat. So nobody wins if it's a fight to get your child to do things. You've lost, and more importantly, your child has lost a lot of opportunities if they don't learn to cooperate. Cooperation is a win-win. All right, so we're getting to the end here. This week, I'm going to have you practice and continue to practice everything that you have learned so far. And now you're going to just add in some opportunities to use promise reinforcement. I'd recommend starting to teach your child to follow that direction, to come here or strengthen that. It's pretty simple, easy skill to teach, and you're likely to get a lot of cooperation and be successful using that promise reinforcer. Apply that Rolex rule and also start where it's easy. You're going to be much more successful if you start practicing at times when you're not interrupting a preferred activity. And you might also need another person to help provide some physical guidance from behind for the first few times. If you don't have a second person, that's okay. Just try to stay within an arm's reach of your child until they learn to respond by walking toward you. You shouldn't have to do that all the time. You can gradually increase the distance, vary the place you're practicing or the person giving that direction, and think about all the ways that you might present that direction. Come with me, come upstairs. All right, also throughout this week, I'm going to encourage you to take a look at some of your child's routines. Are there clear signals of availability? And look at some of your family activities. Could any of these be more successful by applying any of the strategies that you've learned so far? All right, that wraps up episode 4. Next time, we're going to dissect the last aspect of part A, prompts. And then we'll have all the pieces and we'll take it from there. The sky's the limit. All right, I want to thank again Bree Troyer and Jim Whitmer for helping me with this episode. Be sure to check out the resource collection I've pinned in the comments section. And also subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss an episode. Thanks for joining, everybody. See you next time.